In 1883, P.T. Barnum, the legendary American showman, placed an ad in the London Times announcing that he had acquired a sacred white elephant from the faraway land of Rangoon, which is now the capital city of Myanmar. According to Barnum, the animal had cost 40,000 British pounds, an astronomical sum in its time, and was the first and only genuine white elephant ever imported. He called the animal Tong Talong, which roughly translates as Gem of the Sky. The elephant was eventually headed for New York City in his show, but for a while he was going to house it in the London Zoological Gardens, and he invited the public to come and marvel. The story of P.T. Barnum's sacred white elephant of Burma deserves to be remembered. According to Barnum, who didn't always represent events accurately, the showman had been looking for a sacred white elephant from the East for some time before he purchased Tong Talong. The first white elephant he purchased, Barnum claimed, was poisoned by priests in its homeland, rather than allow the animal to be sent to a showman in the West. In his own telling, the elephant was acquired after only 3 years of patient persistence and the exercise on behalf of a half-score of our shrewdest agents of wonderful tact, diplomacy, and untiring energy, often at the peril of their lives, and the outlay of $250,000. Barnum was already known for his elephants. Jumbo, an African bush elephant who had been displayed in the London Zoo before being sold to Barnum in 1882, was such a star attraction that Barnum made $1.7 million displaying the elephant in a 31-week season. The elephant was so famous that the word jumbo came literally to mean especially large size. Barnum's announcement created quite a stir. Americans and Europeans had large expectations of the legendary white elephants of Burma. For years, travelers who said they'd gone to the ends of the earth and seen the lands around Burma brought back tales of the veneration of white elephants and of stories of a seeming animal worship. If an elephant displayed albino characteristics was discovered during a Thai monarch's reign, it was considered to be a sign of divine favor. Ritualistic ceremonies were observed when the elephant was brought to court. Sightings of a white elephant were seen as propitious, and the sudden death of a white elephant was viewed in the opposite manner. White elephants were viewed as being so important that monarchs would sometimes add Lord of the White Elephants to their title. The white elephant came to so represent Thailand, then called Siam, that the flag of the kingdom featured the white elephant from 1855 to 1916. Europeans were well aware of the importance of such an animal. For example, Queen Victoria's envoy to the Siamese court of King Mongkut, Sir John Bowring, wrote, "Amidst the most valued presents sent by His Majesty to Queen Victoria was a tuft of white elephant's hairs." He was also given part of a white elephant's skin, which he sent back to London. But there's that other meaning of the term white elephant, because there were stories that the kings of Siam and Burma would give a white elephant to a courtier who had displeased them because the cost of upkeeping the animal would bankrupt them. And that actually appears to be an invention of the West. The animals are still highly prized in Thailand, Myanmar, and Laos and Cambodia, and there's no historic examples of that punitive gift-giving, but the use of the term white elephant to refer to something that's very expensive but very disappointing had been used in Europe at least since the 1600s. And eventually that term would end up being applied to Tong Talong. The ship carrying Barnum's elephant docked in Liverpool on January 14, 1884, and due to the publicity the showman had spread about the beast, reporters were there to meet it. The Times declared, "At first glance, the beast looked very much like any other elephant, except that it had been lying in the dust." It went on to describe the beast as mottled. Scientific American described the elephant as 7 feet 6 inches high and a piebald color. His face, ears, the front of his trunk, and his front feet, and part of his breast are a pinkish flesh color. The rest of his body is a light ashen hue. Most believe the animal to be a disappointment. The difficulty was in the public's understanding of a white elephant. This was partly a translation issue. The Thai name of the creature Barnum was calling a white elephant is Shang Sam Kang, which translates literally to albino or strange color elephant, not white. The characteristics of an albino elephant are not what Europeans were imagining. Rather than milky white, their skin is normally a soft reddish brown, turning light pink when wet, and they have fair eyelashes and toenails. When people found out that the white elephant just had pink patches on its face and nose, they called Barnum a humbug, but London was certainly still interested because some 90,000 people came to see the elephant while it was in the London Zoological Garden, including several political leaders and the Prince of Wales. In his autobiography, Barnum talked about Tong Talong and his own expectations of how the animal should look. "Until my agents first visited Bangkok, the capital of Siam, and there saw the king's sacred white elephant, I had supposed that they were literally white, instead of technically so. Those who had not seen these animals, nor read descriptions of them, had the same idea as myself. When, therefore, my sacred elephant arrived in London, a large portion of the public, having expected to see a milk-white elephant, were disappointed. Letters were written to London newspapers and the Zoological Society expressing the public's disappointment. There were also so-called experts who claimed that Barnum's white elephant was one big humbug. One man who said he had seen white elephants in China wrote, "They are not white in patches like Mr. Barnum's specimen, but all one color, and certainly answered to the description of white elephant much better." William Henry Flower, the president of the Zoological Society at the time and a doctor at a hospital for skin diseases, had a more scholarly view of the animal and said, "The chief interest that remains, that those of us who have never been in the East see for the first time an animal presenting a condition of coloration said to be common in its native land." He also discussed the lack of pigmentation in parts of the elephant's skin and compared it to other skin diseases he was aware of from his work. He defended the Society's choice to display the animal and wrote, "When the Council of the Zoological Society gave permission for the animal to be deposited in their gardens, it was with the belief that it would be one in which the fellows of the Society and visitors to the gardens might take a legitimate interest. But they are in no way responsible for the statements made it by newspaper writers, or the adventitious excitement for which they have created." Another London newspaper took a different view of the situation and wrote that Tong Tolong was, in every respect, an ordinary beast, except that he belongs to Mr. Barnum, who understands the art of advertising. And advertise he did. Barnum circulated reports to papers from members of the public to build interest in the show. Some historians suggest he wrote them himself. He arranged for men to pose as Buddhist priests to make a show of venerating Tong Tolong in late January in his London enclosure. The Victorian public was scandalized, but entertained. A professor of Buddhist literature from University College London was incensed by the show and wrote, "What should we think of men dressing themselves up in the dress of a Catholic priest and going to a sham mass before a sham altar to attract the Burmese to a wild beast show in Burma?" Some members of the Zoological Society didn't approve of the spectacle either, writing, "It might form an attraction in an American peep show, but for the Zoological Society to degrade itself to such a level." The London Zoological Society may have allowed Tong Tolong to be displayed in the first place because of all the positive attention the Society had received when Jumbo had resided in the Society's gardens for years prior to its purchase. In fact, Jumbo was so popular that approximately 100,000 students wrote to Queen Victoria, asking her to block the sale of Jumbo to Barnum in 1882. The white elephant's reception in the gardens was different to Jumbo's almost universal belovedness and caused not only questions about its authenticity, but also questions about how it could be made whiter. In early March 1884, Pears Soap created an advertisement with Barnum's elephant that showed the creature being cleaned by one of its handlers. It read, "The real secret of the white elephant, Pears Soap," implying that Tong Tolong was a humbug and its skin was cleaned and whitened by the product. But if there was controversy in Britain, in America, there would be war. Adam Forepaugh, one of Barnum's chief rivals in the United States, arranged for his own humbug of a white elephant to arrive in the U.S. a mere 8 days before the docking of Tong Tolong. Forepaugh used chemicals to dye his elephant completely white and displayed his fraud as proof of Barnum's supposed fraud. He called it the Light of Asia and wrote pamphlets claiming Barnum's sacred white elephant and all its surroundings a rank fraud. Forepaugh went on to claim that his was the only true white elephant in the United States. The competition between Barnum and Forepaugh became known as the White Elephant War. The American public had much the same reaction to Tong Tolong as the European audience. They said they expected Barnum's elephant to be whiter. Barnum, not one to miss an advertising opportunity, pushed back against Forepaugh's claims of a real white elephant. Barnum dyed one of his own regular elephants white and called it the White Fraud, saying it was a white elephant just like Forepaugh's whitewashed one. He displayed his bleached elephant alongside Tong Tolong to give the public an opportunity to compare the animals. Barnum sought testimonials to the authenticity of the elephant. Daniel B. Sickles, the former U.S. minister to Siam, proclaimed the animal to be the best specimen of a sacred white elephant he had ever seen. Colonel Thomas Knox, the only American to have ever received the Order of the White Elephant from the King of Siam, and David Kerr, the Siamese correspondent to the New York Times, agreed that the mottled elephant was, in fact, the sacred Shangsankang elephant of Siam. In addition, Tong Tolong came, according to Barnum, with a letter that was provided to newspapers and purportedly written by Mang Thi, the second minister of royal elephants, certifying that the elephant named Tong Telong is a species of white sacred elephant and possesses the qualities and attributes of such. The White Elephant War between the circus men came to an end when the Light of Asia died in late 1884. Some historians believe from the chemical treatments to its skin. On January 10, 1887, the main building of the Barnum Circus winter quarters in Bridgeport, Connecticut caught fire. The 600-foot by 200-foot two-story structure burned entirely in just a half an hour. Several animals were lost in the fire, including the circus's show horses, a zebra, 2 tigers, 10 leopards, 5 panthers, and 6 deer. The lead elephant trainer was out of town, and the handlers were unable to control the elephants to get them out of the building. While most of Barnum's 31 elephants broke free, creating what newspapers described as havoc in the streets, 3 elephants died. Among them was Tong Telong, the sacred white elephant of Burma. But Tong Telong was never the attraction that Barnum hoped. The public was simply disappointed when they found out that the sacred white elephant of Burma wasn't, well, white. In his 1891 book, The Wild Beasts, Birds, and Reptiles of the World, The Story of Their Capture, Barnum wrote, "Like the public, I was greatly disappointed in Tong Telong. He was as genuine a white elephant as it's ever existed, but in fact there was never such an animal known. The white spots are simply diseased blotches. I can't say that I grieve that much over his loss." It is ironic that P.T. Barnum, who admitted to such frauds as the mummy of the Fiji mermaid, which was half a monkey carcass sewed to the bottom half of a fish, or Mrs. Heth, a woman in her 80s who he pretended was George Washington's 160-year-old nursemaid, that he himself was disappointed along with the public when he acquired something actually rare, actually legendary. Perhaps it was his own excesses that transformed a real white elephant into the metaphorical one. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The History Guy, short snippets of forgotten history between 10 and 15 minutes long. And if you did enjoy, please go ahead and click that thumbs up button. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for future episodes, please write those in the comment section. I will be happy to personally respond. Be sure to follow The History Guy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and check out our merchandise on teespring.com. And if you'd like more episodes on forgotten history, all you need to do is subscribe.